podcast that takes you on an extraordinary journey through life's most daunting challenges. I'm your host, Marcelo Bermudez. I run Shokunin, a strategic planning and capital access practice dedicated to helping business owners and commercial real estate investors make their lives easier and access the capital they need to grow and meet their personal, business, and financial goals. Through my work and relationships, I've come to understand no one hands success out on a silver platter. You forge it through determination, resilience, and hard work. In each episode, we unravel the captivating stories of remarkable leaders who have faced seemingly insurmountable obstacles yet refuse to succumb to adversity. These individuals remind us that there are no shortcuts on the path to greatness. By sharing these stories, our aim is to inspire and motivate professionals like you to embrace the journey towards greatness, knowing that there is no silver bullet to success, only the unwavering commitment to hard work. And today, we have the extraordinary guest joining us. Martin Collazos is a remarkable individual who has defied the odds time and time again. Not only is he a successful high school teacher who has chaired AP Spanish and AP Psychology departments, but he's also regularly gotten all sorts of accolades. But he's also a 3-time open heart surgery survivor. His journey is one of triumphs and tribulations, a testament to the human spirit, incredible resilience. Most importantly, Martin is also my best friend of more than 40 years, so it gives me great pleasure not only to welcome, but to thank Martin for being my fearless wingman on this first effort of what I hope will be an inspiration for many others as he does me. Martin, welcome to No Silver Bullet.
Thank you, Marcelo. I'm glad to be here.
So, Martin, I'm going to start with the first question. Tell me a little bit about your journey, your health journey, as well as where you are today.
Okay. So I was an unexpected child. And because of that, my mom had a difficult pregnancy because she was older. And at some point, they thought I was a tumor, and they may have treated her for a tumor. And then I was born with truncated heart, which needed to have a valve replacement. And I had my first valve replacement when I was 3. And we did it up at Stanford University or Stanford Medical with Dr. Shumway. And then stayed there for 21 days, got it done. I was one of a few kids who it was the first time they'd done this type of thing for them. And then flash forward to being 11, they needed to replace my valve again because the original one gotten too small. So they did that when I was 11, and then that was okay. I couldn't do a lot of physical stuff like I mean, you probably remember in PE I couldn't do a lot of real big exercise and stuff. But I did my best, and I kept trying to do what I could. And then I after high school went to college, UC Riverside, got my bachelor's degrees in Spanish and psychology, then got my teacher credential, and then I started teaching at 23 at Burbank High School, which is still the high school I work at now, 26 years later. And I've been pretty successful with that. In that time I got married and I had my 2 boys. And back in 2018, I started getting a shortness of breath in January, and they checked some stuff out, and they decided that they needed to change my valve again because I hadn't had the valve changed since I was 11, so since '84, and then they did that surgery. Well, they tried to go in through my leg first, because they can do that. But that the valve was so calcified that they had to go in through my chest, and then that started the great ordeal of that day, or that week actually.
Wow. So in terms of significant challenges and worrying about your heart, having 2 open heart surgeries and then in and out of the hospital, how did you maintain your mental health? How did you keep your chin up knowing these things were going on in your body, but you pressed forward to step into your purpose?
Well, I've always been kind of positive. I learned to be positive. I had a couple of hard times when I was younger and when I was 19, and I learned how to kind of. I was originally going to be an engineer at UC Riverside, and then I ran through a bunch of just rough times at UC Riverside, and then I ended up studying psychology. And by doing that, it gave me a lot of tools to be able to kind of help myself, be more positive. And especially when the last surgery came about, and they said they had to do it because nobody wants to have open heart surgery, so when they told me that they couldn't get it changed, do the one through my leg, and they said that I was going to need open heart surgery, I thought, oh man. They said, well, you can do it, and within, you can do it. You have 2 years to do it. 2 years is the max where you can do it. From this point on, and that was back in March of 2018. And I said, well, I talked to my wife and I said, hey, honey, I'd rather have it done now than later. So we ended up getting it done in June of 2018. And I wanted it to be done in June so that way I would have a couple months to recover. So then I could be able to go back to work when school started again. And yeah, I mean, it was just pretty much just, the being able to kind of like, I exercise a lot. I have since doctors told me I've been able to, and that was going to be a little bit of a shock to me because the doctor said that it's going to take a while for me to get back to working out, because that's usually the thing that kind of keeps me motivated and keeps me positive. All the endorphins from exercise. But it was also my wife and my boys. They're the ones who kept kind of kept me going, and they would help me when I could. And, when I couldn't do stuff like, taking a shower was kind of rough after the surgery, and my wife would help me, all those kinds of things. But it was a lot of the inner kind of like, because it's painful and it's a lot of pain, and I don't like pain meds. So I kind of weaned myself off of them after I got here. And within 2 weeks, I was just, I weaned myself off of them, and I was, just kept in my head, pain is transient, meaning that pain doesn't last forever. And I knew that at some point I just kept a goal that at some point I was going to be okay, and okay enough to get back to, my life as I knew it and I understood it. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what I've been able to do.
That's great. Sounds like you had some good tools and a mindset to achieve the goals as you were getting through that process.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. It was the mindset, and then it was also a lot of it was also just my family and my wife. She was awesome because unbeknownst to me and known to everybody else, when I went in for surgery on Monday, I went in at 8 a.m. And I was supposed to be done within a few hours, and then hopefully waking up on Monday night or Tuesday morning. And when I came to, I was still had the air thing in my mouth. I can't think what it's called right now. Yeah. I woke up and I kind of didn't know what was going on. And my wife told me that it was Thursday. And I thought to myself, how is it Thursday? Yeah. That it was Thursday. And I
It's 2030, Martine.
yeah, like Rip Van Winkle. It's like I had a giant beard. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, it was Thursday, and I didn't understand what had happened. And I guess what had happened was that when they cut through my sternum, my aorta was up against the sternum. So as they cut through the sternum to get to my heart, they cut through my aorta, and that turned into a different operation than they had planned. Because they had planned to replace the valve, but now they had to repair the aorta, and they got it all done. But my heart was so swollen that they chose to keep my chest open until my heart swelling went down. And yeah, and I spent 3 days with my chest open, and my wife, signing all the papers, for every time I needed a chest tube or anytime I needed any of that kind of stuff. And she kept the faith, and I kept, I also kept the faith. She told me that the only times that that I reacted was when she would talk to me about my boys. And when she talked to me about Star Wars. So those are the two things. But Star Wars is just something that has always been my thing since I was,
And that's always been your
yeah.
thing. Sounds like you and your wife have a good level of communication.
Yeah, yeah, we do. Sometimes, I mean, like any marriage, it's not perfect, but we try. I'm usually the one who has to try harder, but
So you're the one always apologizing like me?
yeah, but yeah, I mean, we communicate well, and it just, once I awakened at the hospital and stuff, it was her just kind of being there, and then my family and support from all my friends. I'm a Facebook person, so there was support from my former students and colleagues and friends from as long as you and Andy, which is another friend of ours from when we were kids. Just all over the place. It was really nice. It was really good to see that.
I'm glad you brought that up because that was another question I was going to ask you. How has your experience as a high school teacher influenced your outlook on one, on education, and two, the importance of resilience in young individuals, especially with the challenges you've gone through and the way kids are today?
I think school education is changing. It's no longer just about the learning. It's about learning and supporting. And for some teachers, it's kind of rough, but for me, I think it's something that kind of came naturally to me. And because I've always been kind of like that with my students. I've always kind of been there for them. Even recently, I had a student of mine who graduated 9 years ago reach out and say, "Hey, Mr. Krause, I'm going through some rough times. I was just wondering, you're the first person that I thought of to talk to about, could we meet?" And I met with her last week, and she's just going through some stuff, but she just her family doesn't believe in therapy, and and she just needed somebody to talk to. And I always tell my students, as long as you know where to find me, at least for another 14 years, you'll find me at my school, and they'll be able to, if they need anything, contact me, and they've been able to do that. And I do, you know, I put my money where my mouth is. If they need help and they ask for help, I'll be there for them. And anyway, I think I'm just meandering at this point, but yeah, the kids are kind of changing. They're a bit more. Some of them need a bit more hand holding than we used to be able to do with kids. Um, but I try to be there for them, and for the most part, they're really good, and they come back. They get something from it, and I see that, and I hear that, sometimes years later, on Facebook, or somebody emails me and says, "Hey, Mr. Collazos, you inspired me to study psychology." I had one time where I had a student say that if it wasn't for my class, she's not sure if she would have been around. I just, talking, sharing my hardships and how I kind of came over, overcame them. It's a AP psychology class, but I also kind of reach out to them and talk to them about, the harmful effects of things like drugs and what it could do to them, and talk about how to handle stress, and and kind of teach them how to deal with that, and and just everything to kind of try to help them. Like I tell them, it's we're not only in my class to learn about psychology, we're also in my class for them to be able to to be successful in their life with what they've learned, and then with other things that they've learned in class.
Hmm. You've been teaching for how many years now?
26.
26 years.
Hmm.
Over the 26 years, do you feel like you've been dealing more with kids who have suicidal thoughts or other mental health issues compared to when you first started 26 years ago?
Um, it has there's been kind of a bit of a rise since the pandemic, since COVID, where kids are a bit more depressed, kids are a bit more anxious, um, and I have noticed that a lot more. They share more nowadays than they used to. Um, sometimes I'm for some with some teachers, not all teachers, but with some teachers, I'm one of them because I allow myself to be open to them so they can do that. Um, but yeah, I have noticed that it is a little bit more, stressful and anxious, and some of the kids sometimes don't come to class because they're at the wellness center. At my school, there's a wellness center where they can go to and kind of talk to counselors that are there from the community, and they're there, every day. And some kids, after the pandemic, spent a lot of time there. And there are still some kids who just, I had one girl this year who, you know, came to school maybe 70% of the time, and the other percent, she was just at home, not being able to deal with school, with the anxiety school, brings about.
Okay. What advice would you give someone who's facing a difficult situation and is struggling to persevere and find their purpose?
Um, Part of it is kind of like, so I would tell them, one, find your people. I think a lot of what allows us, because we as human beings, we're people oriented. We wouldn't have survived this long if we weren't, because those people who wanted to be all alone back when we were all tribal, they went off alone and they got killed. So the people who, knew how to bond with other people survived, and we're, an evolution, we're in evolution of that. And studies have shown that when you have people to talk to, when you have support system like that, because when we're stressed, one of the interesting things about stress is that it also elicits a hormone, that oxytocin, that makes us seek out people when we're stressed, and that's why we kind of feel we need to. And if we find people that we can kind of lean on, I mean, it was, when I was going, because I had a little bit of about, last year, where my heart, started doing weird things because I had an arrhythmia. And, and I went home, I went to the doctor and I was there, and you came out to see me. And that was awesome because, I know you've always been there for me. And, that's the kind of thing. So find your people, and then just know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, because sometimes, I mean, because, when I went through the rough times that I went through when I was in high school, I mean, when I was in college, my first couple of years, um, there were times where I kind of didn't want to be around. And I kind of, couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And, but with the support of my family and the friends that I had at the time, and I was able to just kind of push through. And as I tell my students, this is the light at the end of the tunnel. You have a wonderful job, have, my wife, my kids, the wonderful life that I have now. But you just gotta work for it and find how to deal with, with stress, whether it's meditating or breathing or exercising. You got to be able to kind of figure that kind of stuff out.
That's fantastic. Wonderful. Last question.
Okay.
Is work-life balance a myth or something you can do?
No, it's something that does exist. It's extremely important. And I work, and I learned a long time ago when I had my kids, to figure out how not to bring work home. So the whole time that I'm at school, I get there. I have a zero period, so I start at 7:30. So I get there between 6 and 6:30, and from that point on, I'm working. Even when I don't have class, even when I have a free period, I'm working, grading papers, doing the stuff that I need to do, planning for the next day, setting up my Google Classroom for the day or the next day or whatever. Because I don't want to bring work home, and that allows me to be able to, hang with my family, make dinner when, on a few nights that I make dinner. It allows me to work out, allows me to take the boys to piano lessons, soccer practice, basketball, all the stuff. And I think that is the thing that kind of keeps you going. And work life balance is something that's really important, I think, because you should, I've seen this before, where you shouldn't live to work. You should work to live, or something like that. Because I work and I get paid, and I love my job because I love teaching my kids, my students. They're awesome. Every year, great kids. It's they're different kids, but it's always the same effect at the end of every single year. And then it's that balance. If I wasn't exercising, I wasn't rested, and I had problems at home, I don't think I would be as effective of a teacher as I am if I didn't have that balance. Because sometimes you can see people who are some teachers who are like, the kids are like, oh my god, he's always grumpy, he's always like, no, 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 no. It's because they sometimes don't do a lot of that work-life balance type of thing.
Martin, thank you so much for joining me today on No Silver Bullet. I really appreciate getting to have you, my best friend of 40 plus years, on this first episode. Thank you for sharing your story and honestly for being so transparent. And thank you to the audience who are joining us today. Thank you for coming to understand that success is not handed to us on a silver platter, but rather it's forged through determination, resilience, and hard work. See you next time on No Silver Bullet.